Joaquin Phoenix is playing the Joker in the upcoming 2019 movie. You likely already knew that, but this isn't his first foray into the DC universe. Back in 1989, at the age of 14, he appeared in an episode of Superboy. Now, we don't know how Joker will turn out yet, but we do have this episode of Superboy, which is ripe with cheesy 80s cliche and charm. So if you're interested, let's recap it and break it down to appreciate all of its quirkiness. We'll take a look at some obscure production details along the way. This is a deep look at the Joaquin Phoenix episode of Superboy. To start, in case you're not familiar with the show, let's cover some quick basics. Superboy aired in syndication from 1988 to 1992. It was produced by the Salkinds, who produced the first 3 Christopher Reeve Superman movies. And then Supergirl. After Supergirl flopped, they sold the film rights to Canon, but the Salkinds retained the TV rights, and this was the result. The first thing I want to mention, and this really doesn't have anything to do with Joaquin Phoenix, but the first 3 notes of the Superboy theme is the exact same musical phrase as the Adventures of Superman theme. I'm rusty on my music terminology, so bear with me, but Superboy starts with these 3 notes. That's DGG. The Adventures of Superman is a few steps lower at AEE, but when you raise the pitch, they're the exact same. Just thought I'd point that out. Okay, on with the recap. The episode starts off with Joaquin Phoenix playing Billy Hercules. He's sitting in class pining over Hairspray Girl. He's credited as Leaf Phoenix here. It's not his real name or even his middle name. He just wanted to be called Leaf at this point. Actually, prior to 1995, he was only credited as Leaf. At this point, Phoenix had already been in a handful of movies and had guest starred on several TV shows. This Superboy role was his final TV gig. So he races out of class and is ambushed by a trio of cliche 80s punks.
Say goodbye, Wonder Boy!
They toss him into a dumpster, but as they gloat, out flies Super Billy? I'm not really sure what to call him, but he's in full Superboy getup, and it's a custom fit for him, even down to the boots. It's surprising given how small the production budget was for this show. Oh, and these practical wirework flying effects are actually fairly good for the time, especially considering how bad the Superman visual effects had degraded from movie to movie. They've convincingly removed the wires. This is something they let lapse in Superman 3, which was relatively a big budget movie. Anyhow, Super Billy heat visions this guy in the nuts. In fact, he keeps going until this guy is a pile of char. Then he blows this guy into what looks like an 80s cigarette vending machine. The third guy runs off and Billy gives this classic villain laugh. Perhaps Billy is a good kid, but is irresponsible with his powers. Or perhaps he's another Kryptonian. Nope, it's just a daydream. Billy's last name is Hercules, which really doesn't factor into the story. He doesn't have any powers, and there's no real parallels with the Hercules myth. It seems like he's only named Hercules so that they can call this episode Little Hercules, which isn't even that good of a title. Afterwards, we see Clark Kent and his dorm mate TJ White. TJ White is Perry White's son. He's best known for falling into a dumpster of only Pepsi and Dr. Pepper cans. Anyway, they write for their college newspaper and they're going to interview Billy because he's some sort of computer genius. TJ even mentions that the Russians want Billy to defect because he's an expert hacker.
They say he's so smart the Russians try to make him defect.
Here's some cliche foreshadowing with this headline. That's going to come up later. Oh, and TJ's sleeves are pulled up for this close-up shot, and then they're down for this wide shot. Clark meets Billy, and they have a heart-to-heart about feeling isolated.
When I walk down the hall, they treat me like an alien. I just want to be treated normal.
Okay, on to the next plot point. Recall that headline about the Navy sub from about 8 seconds ago? It turns out that Billy goes on a school field trip to that naval base which is launching the sub. During the tour, they stop at an observation room which oversees the command center. The tour guide then gloats about how rock solid their security is.
Access to the computer room is permitted only by the use of one of these.
Then he tells everyone to watch this guy enter his password, as these random kids watch their every move.
Notice that as he types in his password, nothing appears on the screen. That's so nothing shows that could be observed by an unauthorized person.
He even tells them that the password is 16 characters long.
Each operator has his own 16-character password to gain primary access into the system.
This reveals the password to Billy, which he later uses to hack into the servers. So yeah, great security. One tiny detail to notice here, you can make out this name Vurex at this workstation. Vurex is actually an international committee which assisted in the enforcement of the Biological Weapons Convention. That's the treaty which bans the use of biological weapons. So this is odd, but good attention to detail. Recall that villain laugh from earlier? One might suspect that Billy would hack into the submarine's missiles to get revenge on his bullies, or maybe use them against Superboy because he's envious of his powers. Nope. He just embeds a poem into the system that the computer will recite over and over on live TV, which will reveal his crush on Hairspray Girl. Anyway, everything goes down according to plan while his class is watching on live TV. But then things go sideways and the missile starts a 30-minute detonation countdown. They're clamped into their missile bays, which prevents them from being launched because of reasons. So when they go off, they'll take out the sub and blow half the coastline into orbit.
This sub, along with half the coastline, will be blown into orbit.
Orbit? Okay, then this guy is like, ain't that some shit? At this point, I'd like to point out that all that stuff about Billy daydreaming about Superboy never really comes up in the episode again. I'm guessing it was only there as an excuse to put Lee Phoenix into a Superboy costume. Maybe they needed to pad out the episode runtime, which is only about 20 minutes. So, who knows? Moving along, Billy was in class when the 30-minute countdown started. Then he's back at home trying to fix it. Superboy apparently knows that Billy is responsible and where he lives because he shows up in his bedroom. The episode is 20 minutes and Superboy shows up at the 14-minute mark. They're off to the sub and check out these amazing 80s blue screen effects. It's like they're really there. Superboy's visual effects were done on video as opposed to film, so the quality of video blue screen work is really on par with something like an 80s local TV weather report. Except it's worse here because of signal degradation from each time they duplicate an image onto a new layer. So by the time you get to the final shot, it looks like this. Billy and Superboy arrive, Billy explains stuff to Navy Guy explains stuff to Superboy. A couple minutes pass, and we see the countdown timer. It's at 20 minutes. The countdown started at 30 minutes.
In 30 minutes, this sub, along with half the coastline, will be blown into orbit.
That means that Billy watched things go wrong while in class, then runs home from school, tries to stop the countdown, meets Superboy, flies to the sub and has a chit-chat with Navy Guy, all within 10 minutes. So, time out for another production detail. Superboy's suit is virtually identical to the Reeves suit. The boots, belt, blue tunic are all using the same design used in the earlier movies. The only noticeable difference here is that Superboy's suit uses the DC Standard S, whereas the Reeves suit used a custom design. You can spot the difference with how the serif thing on the Reeves suit angles outwards, then how the end of the S curves upwards at the end. That's important because, actually it's not important, but now you know. Superboy's cape, however, uses the Reeve S, so the DC Standard logo on front and the Reeve S on the back. This suggests that they reused some of the Reeves suit in this show, and that kind of breaks my heart. And that brings us to the end of this episode. Billy fails and everyone dies. So that's the video. But seriously, that whole false ending was just another daydream for some bizarre reason. Billy disables something, Superboy does a Mr. Kool-Aid through the door, then disarms the nukes. The end. Not surprisingly, Joaquin Phoenix is the best actor in this episode. Well, aside from Navy Guy. Though that's not saying much. There isn't much indicating that this kid will develop into one of the finest actors of his generation. His work over the past decade has been amazing, and he's bound to make an interesting Joker. And could this movie provide the bedrock for a new, more watchable DC cinematic universe? We'll have to wait and see. In any case, I'd like to thank these folks for helping support the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.
Viacom.